Howdy, folks. Welcome to the podcast Iron. My name is Laura Mullen Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our lovely guest on today's episode is Morgan Lugo. And yes, it is the very same Morgan Lugo whose solo Tributaries exhibition is opening on April 21st at the Metal Museum in Memphis. Not only has Morgan worked at an art foundry for years, but her own artistic practice has produced an extensive and inspiring body of work. I'm thrilled for you to get a chance to gain a deeper understanding of her and her art through this conversation. Morgan, thank you so much for being willing to jump into this interview. I had a blast catching up, but I'm also so inspired by hearing your career story. The drive and dedication that you direct towards your artwork has motivated me to set some new goals myself to strive for. So thank you. Now, quickly, before we get into the interview, I have to mention our wonderful sponsors. First of all, the podcast Iron Show is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon. And yeah, that's about 20 to 25 of our friends and colleagues. So thank you to everyone who has personally joined as a Patreon member to help me afford to keep the show going. And I'd also like to thank our top supporters of today's show, which are the Metal Museum, Crescent Creative, the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and Sloss Metal Arts. These fantastic organizations provide a large portion of the funding that is keeping my ability to produce these episodes afloat. So I just want to take a few moments to introduce them to you. First up, I'm thrilled to tell you about the National Ornamental Metal Museum. The Metal Museum is located in the heart of Memphis, Tennessee, and it's the only museum of its kind which is dedicated to preserving, promoting, and advancing the art and craft of metalwork. The Metal Museum offers a unique experience with a rich exhibition schedule, a growing permanent collection, an on-site blacksmith shop and foundry, and education and outreach programming. From demos and classes to master workshops and 2-year apprenticeships, this museum offers vast opportunities for all skill levels. Mark your calendars for the Fire Casting Conference that is happening May 30th through June 2nd. It's open to students as well as emerging and advanced artists. Additionally, the Metal Museum's exhibition schedule is entering a season of casting itself, and they started off last month strong with an exhibition titled Branching Out, which explores the fascinating ways mentors, students, and foundries share knowledge in paths of growth that resemble a family tree. The exhibition is open now and will be open until September 8th. Also in April, don't miss casting artist Morgan Lugo's Tributaries exhibition titled It's All Relative, with a reception and artist talk on April 21st. And obviously, we're going to talk about this today in the interview with Morgan in just a little bit, but we're still talking about the casting related exhibitions that will be featured at the Metal Museum. So also in September, immerse yourself in the works of master metalsmith Preston Jackson. His exhibition, titled A Hidden Culture, critiques today's society through a mythologized Civil War-era American South. To learn more and get involved, visit their website, which is metalmuseum.org, and follow them on Instagram at Metal Museum. Thank you so much, Metal Museum, for supporting today's episode. Another sponsor of today's episode is Crescent Creative. Crescent Creative is a digital design and fabrication studio located in Birmingham, Alabama. They utilize CNC router technology to produce foundry patterns, outdoor signage, furniture, and public art commissions. If you have questions, they have solutions. You can find them on Instagram at Crescent Creative. Check them out and give them a follow. They're always up to creating interesting and artistic custom designs for their customers, and I love seeing their projects pop up on my Instagram feed. Thank you so much, Crescent Creative, for your support of today's show. Another very meaningful top supporter of the podcast Iron is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. They are an organization that consists of iron casting artists in the western states of the U.S. Their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the U.S. And one of the ways that they accomplish this goal is by hosting a conference every 2 years. So start planning to come out west for their conference in the fall of 2024. This coming Western Conference will be at the tail end of October in San Diego, California. And I always have to point out that you don't have to live in the West to attend the Western Conference. So you should definitely make the trip. They'll love to have you. And I will be there, so I'll love to see you as well. A big thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for their support of this podcast. For more information about this fantastic organization, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. Also, if you want to keep up to date on things as they develop for the Western Conference, if you go to their website, you can sign up to be on the mailing list so that you'll get emails keeping you up to date on everything as it's progressing. Another longtime top supporter of the show is Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, they host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices, and that's held every 2 years. And now that the 2025 National Conference planning has officially kicked off, you're going to want to follow Sloss Metal Arts and NCCCIAP on Instagram to keep up to date on all things Sloss related and conference related. And this will include calls for next year's conference of things like the guest furnaces, to student cupola competition teams, exhibition entries, if you want to teach a demo or lead a workshop, or if you have a presentation that you would like to present, or if you have an idea for a panel discussion. These programming things will all have deadlines. And I'll do my best to try and keep you informed. But remember, I'm not currently a conference organizer, and so I don't always have everything at the tip of my tongue when I'm recording these episodes. And also, I only release one episode a month. So please take matters into your own hands and keep up with the deadlines as they correspond to your aspirations. So also at the moment, Sloss Metal Arts is accepting applications for their 8-week Visiting Artist in Residence program. The deadline for this is next Friday, March 15th. And if this is something that you're just hearing about now, then I'm sorry, but you have a week to whip up an application. But everybody else that is applying, good luck. And all the information on how to apply is on their website, which is slossmetalarts.com. And if you're interested in really being in the know about the conference, seriously go to the website nccciap.com, and that's the conference specific website, and sign up to be on their email list. And then you'll get all the emails that will keep you up to date as well. So if you miss something on Instagram, you'll have it in your inbox. So guys, let's make this next conference be the biggest one yet. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts. You are an amazing resource. So finally, let's get into this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. Morgan Lugo, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
And so let's jump right into it. And who the hell are you anyways?
Well, I'm Morgan Lugo. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I do metal casting sculptures, predominantly bronze, but aluminum and iron as well. And I've recently been doing some marble sculpting, which is very new venture. As of maybe 7 months ago, I'm a full-time artist, which is really exciting. But before that, I worked at Inferno Art Foundry in Atlanta for 6 years, and I was a welder and mold maker there. And then I worked at another foundry before that. And so it's cool to finally be on my own, but it's scary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you've got a big show going on right now, and another big show coming up at the Metal Museum. And yes. I wore my Metal Museum shirt, my favorite Metal Museum shirt in pink. I don't know. Can you see it?
Nice. Yeah, I can see the top
the
of it.
old school, here, I'll show you. The old school logo in the pink. It's my favorite. So I was like, we're doing it. We're doing all the things.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited.
So before we get into that though, I want to kind of jump back in time and talk about some memories that you have from childhood about things that happened that maybe helped you become the person that you are today.
Yeah, I would say that I think like my most foundational childhood kind of journey experience was for 12 years, I was an ice hockey goalie and I played with all men except for on like one other team. And I played like very intensely travel hockey with, I really just like wanted to be like my brother. So I was just kind of like following them around. And then it was like my first love was hockey. And it was definitely, faced a lot of challenges, especially being like a very young girl at a very young age, dealing with like very overt sexism by people. And it's learning how to like navigate that at like 8 or 9 years old, being told that like you're like not good enough because you're a woman while you're that young. And so I feel like that's like definitely helped me overcome a lot of like hurdles very young, and being able to like withstand like other people's opinions that are not true about me, from a young
Yeah,
age.
I hear that.
And as well, I think that like hockey is like iron casting, especially as a goalie, is like a very humbling medium. It's a very humbling position. Like it's super hard. It takes a lot of work to get good at it. So it kind
Mhm.
of helps like build dedication, resilience, like practice, like kind of like a routine around what you're doing. And so I played for 12 years and I actually went to college on a hockey scholarship, but then
Oh.
decided to go to art school instead, even though I like had never made a piece of art before in my life. I
Mhm.
was just like, oh, okay, I think I'm creative, but also it's kind of like, where are you going to really go with women's hockey? Like, let's be really be honest. Like, it's like for career wise, I'm like, I also don't want to know I'm only good at one thing for the rest of my life. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, just felt like the right thing to do, even though everyone thought I was crazy. And so, yeah, I went to art school and then accidentally found metal casting at art school.
So I don't even know where you went.
I went to Georgia State. So I studied under
Oh,
George. Yeah. And James Vanderpool was my first intro to sculpture teacher. And
that's
so James
fantastic.
Vanderpool is the one who told me and James Vincent about the trails. So I knew about the trails because of him, because he told us about the internship.
Right, right. Awesome. Okay. So were they casting a lot at Georgia State when you were there?
Yes and no. Like, well, when I first went there, I really like honestly for the first like maybe 2.5 years, really was like, wow, I really made a mistake. I don't know why I went to art school. I'm so bad at art because I was like, I'm not good at drawing, and like 2D is just not my thing. I hated all the still life classes. It was so just like
Yeah, me too. I'm with
just not for me.
I hear that. I knew I wanted to do metalsmithing, and going to art school for a 3D medium that first foundations year kind of sucks because they
Mm,
really drive home all that 2D stuff, which I understand why now, but yeah, I basically would have to like like before life drawing, like figure drawing class, I'd have to go into the bathroom and like pump myself up and be like, you got
oh,
this, you've improved, because it's like it was
it's pretty
so much
hard.
pressure. And also I kind of felt like I was being watched in a
Yeah,
really critical
100%.
way. And it's like, I know I'm bad at this.
It's so quiet. And I'm
And
like, ah,
when they have you, I don't know if you guys did this. So like put all the, everybody's drawing the same model in the center of the room, and then everybody puts all their drawings up on
yeah.
the wall, and it's like mine's like
Oh, mine was
clearly the
tragic. I
worst
was like,
one.
what is that? That's like, I don't even draw fingers. It's like a mitt.
Yeah.
This human does not look like a human. It's a blob. And I'm so embarrassed. And I had like no art practice. And you're going in with all these people who've like clearly been drawing forever, which is great for them. Like practice makes perfect. You're good at it because you've done it a lot.
Yeah.
But very self-conscious 100%,
Yeah.
and was like, okay, 2D. Then I remember taking intro to 3D, which James Vanderpool taught,
Yeah.
which was cool. And I remember being like, oh, he's like so different from all my other art teachers because, like James is so chill and like, well, like metal
Yeah.
sculptors have such a different vibe than every other artist, which is probably why I love the community so much, but it's just so much less pretentious and just, I don't know. I don't really like the whole like pretentious, like highbrow type of way some artists can be. And like, definitely always felt very self-conscious in those classes where I was like, oh, I'm definitely not good enough to be here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I felt like I was in class with every single school's like high school art star. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like every high school has a couple of kids that are like really good at drawing. And then they go to art school, and those were all the people that I was with. And I was like, I just want to go like do metalsmithing.
that's cool that you
So
knew like you knew about metalsmithing before you went.
yeah, I was really lucky. I kind of stumbled across it, and the high school, like my high school art department teacher was really probably the only reason why I am where I guess everybody could say that though about somebody. Like he's the one that really like told my parents, she can go to college for this. And
That's cool.
but yeah, I just remember like telling myself like you just have to get through this class, and then you like there's a certain amount of drawing classes you have to take, and then after that it's like just studio. And I was like, and I was interested in sculpture, taking like intro to welding and that
I was sick.
types of
Yeah.
classes. And so but you still had to, it's like you still have to take art history, and you still had to take those like drawing classes. And I just remember telling myself, you just got to get a passing grade, and then you never have to do this again for the rest of it. you know
Yeah, definitely. I will only draw if I have to.
yeah, I mean sometimes I sketch a little bit. Not my I'm pretty three-dimensional myself. Maquettes I do,
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I think that like going from 3D, I like really liked that. Or after that, then I took like my foundation or like your intro classes, and I did intro to hand building, which was like
Oh, yeah.
ceramics. And so that's the first time I was like, oh, this clicks. My brain just works in 3 dimensions. It doesn't work in 2 dimensions. Like I don't understand how to flatten this, but I can like see this in the round in my brain without even drawing it.
Yeah,
It's like my brain understands this. My brain is incompatible with that, where it's like, that's everyone pick your poison in life. But
absolutely. Yeah.
so I got really into it. And then uh I'm just like my middle name is Grace, but I'm not graceful. And I kept breaking everything that I was making. So I was like, okay, ceramics is cool, but like I need to figure out how to not break everything because I would
Yeah.
get excited. I'd be like, look at this thing. So I would just break it in half, and I'd be like, I just broke it during critique. So maybe we're gonna fail because I'm super excited.
No.
But this one day I was building an armature for something, and I needed to borrow an electric drill. And so I had to go to the sculpture studio to get an electric drill for this armature. And I go in, and so George Beasley and James Vincent were pouring bronze.
Oh.
And the person that was supposed to meet them, I think, like got a flat tire or something. So I just like walked in trying to borrow a drill. I had never seen a sculpture studio. I had no idea what molds were. I didn't know what metal casting was. And then James was like, can you help us pour? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but fine. And then I
Okay.
just never went back to my ceramics class, and I transferred into sculpture. And like, it's like my one true love in life, but it was by accident. I was just borrowing a drill. And
Heck
I
yeah.
ended up, and then I was like, okay, yeah, these are my people. And I'm like, there's a definitely an element to metal casting in the community and like working towards something together that I like really miss from playing sports my whole life. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I
Where even
do.
though we're all making our own pieces, you're not making these huge molds by yourself. You're pouring together. Like we're all invested in each other's stuff because we all know how hard it is to make everything. So it's like in a way a very individual but communal situation. It also has like, the adrenaline. You get to like get down and dirty. You get to like feel it,
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways. So I was like, oh, okay, art doesn't have to be this like buttoned up white gallery, like, oh, don't say too much or whatever type of thing, where I'm like, oh, okay, there's like a whole completely less pretentious like field of people and art out there that like definitely resonated with me a lot more. And so I was like, okay, I like sculpture. This is fun.
Yeah, yeah. So did you know James Vincent before that moment? Okay. So it really was like a stranger walked in and they were like, "Oh, we need a third person to
Yeah,
hold."
they needed help. It's really hard for me to remember exactly what
Oh
happened,
yeah.
but
I know, cuz there's things that happened to me like 15 years ago and I'm like, it was an important moment, but I don't really remember it. So, okay.
I remember definitely that I was not pouring with them because I was wearing sneakers, and I was like, is this
Yeah.
okay? And they're like, you're just gonna skim over there. Keep your feet
Oh.
away. And I was like, I don't know what skimming means, but okay, I'll do whatever. And I was like, I don't want to go back to my ceramics class anyways. This is like molten metal. It seems really cool. And then yeah, from there it was awesome. But I've never actually even taken a foundry class though, because George is like was retired, but he came
Yeah.
back for one class. But the first I did like 1 year, and I did my intro to mold making
Mhm.
and intro to welding, or
Mhm.
intro to welding woodworking class. And then the next semester I was taking foundry with George, but like the first week of the semester I got like a very bad concussion and I had to like hardship withdraw from school.
Word.
And
Okay.
so I didn't remember. I had to like reteach myself how to weld and like all this. I couldn't drive for 6 months. So like
Wow. Okay.
was very I don't remember like a month and a half of my life. That's also why I'm like I don't can't completely remember exactly what happened. I just know that I was not supposed to be pouring metal. I showed up at the shop and then I was pouring metal. And it was really cool. But it was really yeah, it was a huge turning point in my life, I
Mhm.
think. I couldn't drive for 6 months. I would forget that I was hardship withdrawal from school, and I would walk 2.5 miles from my house to school because I knew I couldn't drive.
Yeah.
But I would be like, oh, and then George would drive me home. He's like, you're not supposed to be here. And I'm like, please
Oh.
don't take me back there. I want to hang out. I'm lonely. And he's like, no, you're not allowed to be here. And I was like, I just want to make art. What if I paint? They're like, no, you can't be here. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn.
But
But
then you got back. You got back.
yeah, yeah, it took me about a year and a half to feel like mainly normal. I still like have really bad vertigo from it sometimes, and
Okay.
my memory kind of sucks sometimes, but I'm also kind of spacey, so I don't really know how much is like the concussion at this point because it was like 9 years ago at this
Yeah.
9 or 10 years ago, and so yeah, it's just part of my journey. But I think it ultimately I was partying a lot in my first few years of college. And of course, when I'm healing from that, I was sober for a year and a half after,
Mhm.
well, on and off. I kind of drank, but a little bit, but it was nothing like, huge
I
ragers every night. And so,
I went to college and grad school. I went to grad school in Athens, Georgia.
yeah, yeah.
So we're just gonna leave that there.
Yeah, so I was very mild in comparison, but I think it was cool because I don't think if that happened, I would have been able to like really refocus
Mhm.
and like actually find my little like pocket of love with
Yeah.
sculpting, because it's like I got to like re-challenge my brain
Mhm.
by relearning how to sculpt. And like like I like love mold making. It's one of my favorite things ever. And so I think like getting to like challenge myself with these like mental puzzles that are also part of my art like
Yeah.
helped me a lot. But I also like was very self-conscious about talking about it for quite a while. Like my
Mhm.
first summer at the trails, I think I was 9 months out from my concussion, so I
Okay.
was kind of starting to drink again a little bit. But I remember still just being like, James, don't tell anybody. And I like didn't want anyone to know because I didn't want like people to think I was stupid. And
Well, also it's
because
none of their business.
yeah, it was just like I don't also want to like pre-put that into people's brains, you know what I mean? I'm like, I am
Yeah.
kind of spacey and I can like kind of rock with it, but it definitely was hard because my vertigo was like very severe. I was throwing up like 25 to 30 times a day. And then
Oh
I was like,
my goodness. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and especially like there, I was like, oh, I just don't want people to know, like what I mean. Well, it's kind of hard. Also, I'm sure like as being a woman and as being like a feminine woman, it's
Yeah.
also pretty hard for people to listen to you and respect you and like give you the opportunities that they give anybody else because they're like, oh, sweetheart, it's okay. And I'm like, no, like,
Yeah. You're right. I do face that same kind of like hardship. And, but I also don't want to compromise like who I am, with the pink and the pink. Like I want to
yes,
present the way I want to present, and I also want to have the same respect and kind of voice that
yeah,
I would if
I
I
love
lived.
it.
Yeah. So
I think that for me at first, well, especially like at the beginning, especially when I'm healing from my head injury, I also was like not feeling so much like myself. I was just not confident in
yeah,
myself, period, because like what was injured is my brain. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, I feel wonderful when I'm like, I mean, I don't know if I'm living in a cloud or if I'm awake or if I'm sleeping. I'm a little confused. I don't want people to know. And so I felt like a lot of what my first few years in iron casting, I definitely was trying to like, portray like more a less feminine, more masculine vibe, just so like I could, because I wanted people to like not think that I was stupid and like as just like some stupid girl,
I do.
even
Yeah.
though I'm dealing with shit and there's a reason why I'm being whatever the way. But and then one day I woke up a few like maybe 2 or 3 years into metal casting and I was like, I'm literally perpetuating the patriarchy by making myself more masculine to gain respect from my
Yeah.
peers. And that is fucked up. And
Well,
I'm
I,
doing women a disservice and I'm doing myself a disservice by like not being as authentically me as possible because I'm feeling these pressures to feel like I have to present myself in a more masculine way so I can get respect.
yeah.
And if I perpetuate that, then other women who are coming in won't see women who are feminine and girly and like openly whoever they are and will also not feel comfortable to feel that way. And so then I was just like, oh, no, no, no.
Yeah.
We're changing this vibe immediately.
Perfect.
So
Yes, perfect. Because that's exactly where I'm at. And I have been for like a while. Like, I mean, definitely since before I started the podcast, like already, but well, because you've known me for like maybe since 2017 or 25. I don't know. But it's like,
yeah,
yeah, like I think when I was in grad school, there was a certain amount of like, I don't know, I would wear like men's undershirts. Like that's such a weird thing, but that it was like, no, it's because the utility of the thing. They're
yeah,
inexpensive and they're disposable. And but it's also like, what is that? What is that? That's
yeah. It's
that's
perpetuating the patriarchy. And I
kind
didn't even really like
kind of
unconsciously because I'm like, oh, I
yeah.
gotta like portray myself to be like one of the boys, but not that I'm not, with it. But it's
Yeah.
like I feel like I am trying
Yeah.
to portray myself on like more of like a shop vibe where I'm like,
Yes. Yeah.
okay, now I've got my like non-OSHA approved leggings that I wear and I'm very proud of them and I'm happy with them. And I'm like, but I feel like you were one of the first women that I remember seeing that I was like, oh, Laura's like so girly and that's so awesome.
It like developed, or like I don't want to say it developed. It's like I settled into myself, and
Mm-hmm.
now the like the okay, so I learned from the metal museum. Was it the metal museum? Or it was people related to the metal museum about this woman blacksmith, and her name is Elizabeth Brim. And she is kind of like, I think she's by Penland, actually, like lives in
Oh,
Penland.
okay.
And she's been a master metalsmith at the Metal Museum years ago, but she always forges wearing pearls. That's like her signature.
Oh, I love that.
And I learned that so my graduate professor, Jimbo, and his wife, Leanne, are very good friends with this woman, Elizabeth Brim. And so I just thought that was so like cool of her that she
It's
doesn't
like
have to.
rebellious in a way. You know
Yeah,
what I
like she
mean?
still wears her pearls to the point where when it was her, she was the master metalsmith at Repair Days. The t-shirt from Repair Days that year was like had pearls the
I love
silhouette of
that.
a pearl necklace on the t-shirt for that year. And yeah, so I just thought, yeah, it's kind of like in spite of. It's like I'm gonna do what
Yeah,
I'm gonna do with like amazing
because it
technical
doesn't matter.
ability.
And
It
let's be
yeah,
real, like um, a lot of the best metal workers I know are women. And I'm like, okay, well, kind of have to force yourself to like learn techniques, how to like scale up and learn different techniques earlier than men do because we can't lift things as heavy, but I can lever things together. I can learn how to
yeah,
build jigs, and I had to learn all that stuff before, but now I can like scale up in a
yeah,
way that people who have never had to face that problem because they're strong enough can't. And it's
yeah,
like interesting in the way in which you can like make your disadvantages become your advantages.
yeah,
I think you like are able to have a different perspective on them.
yeah. Because
And
another thing that's important, that's not really about gender or anything, but it's like strength also fades.
mm-hmm,
Just saying, like, you can be really strong in your 20s and 30s, but the amount of people that as soon as they hit their 40s start complaining about these, like,
mm-hmm,
I can't camp. And like, that's all, I can't lay on the ground anymore. Like, that's all like personal things that they have to deal with. And I'm not saying like good for that. Haha. Like, it's just like, it's a fact of life, but it's just
mm-hmm,
also like, if you've had to maneuver things in a different way because of your, not you specifically, because we,
mm-hmm.
like us,
Yeah,
our
anyone.
gender, have had to like deal with certain limitations and workarounds. It's like then you're set for life because you've always had to either
Mm-hmm,
coordinate with other people to get help to, because it's like there's lots of women artists, sculptors, metalsmiths that do huge like
oh yeah.
Rachel White-Reed. I was talking about her the other day, like with her huge like like I installed the Rachel White-Reed show of like the plaster bathtubs and the bookshelves and and it's like the like rubber cast rubber, and it was heavy.
Yeah. You're like,
Like,
why are you stop this with a phone? What are you doing?
but it's like because, she figured out how to have a practice that facilitated her having helpers, assistants, and people that go and set up her shows and things like that. So, what were we talking about before then? What are we
Uh,
doing? But yeah, it's funny because
I was
I,
talking about like gaining
yeah,
confidence in the or like within yourself
yes,
within the metalworking community. And maybe it comes with like also gaining confidence in your skill set a
yeah,
little bit more. Cause it's like once I started feeling more confident with being like, oh, okay, like I know what I'm doing, at least a little bit.
yeah. You don't have to assimilate visually or whatever.
Yeah,
You can,
assimilate, that's a good word.
you
Uh,
know, yeah,
yeah,
you
you don't
can,
want to like stick out too much. Cause also sometimes it's like, I'm not trying to like, I'm just trying to make art. I'm not trying to like show up like fully decked out, being like,
but
you
if
gotta,
somebody did, that's fine too. Like,
yeah,
because they got up the extra hour to do whatever, to make themselves like
yeah.
smell nice and look beautiful. It's like,
You can do it
everybody,
all. You should do it all.
everybody's got the like, I always like to have my nails did. And, it's like different people like different, like, some people like shoes, some people like tools, like, we've all got
Oh
our
yeah.
passions, our like little niche, like side
Mm-hmm.
passions. And that's like what makes us all different, but also interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, it also like helps make the collective hive mind more like exciting and diverse with everyone having like different passions or different interests within like the same niche or like
yeah,
different approaches to the same problem is really cool. And that's like also a thing I love about being a part of a community that's so like, you know, individual but not. And so it's cool because it's like we'll both solve the same problem completely differently. And it's like, oh, watching you do that just now made me realize this thing that I could do with this sculpture at my house that I've been trying to figure out what I should do, and I could just use that. And
yes,
it's like cool. But yeah, I like miss working at a studio with people. I'm here now alone. I'm like just with me and my cat. I'm gonna like become a crazy art lady soon. And I'm
well,
like,
let's get to that because I want to talk more about like what you got going on now. So let's see. So we were at Trails. You were at, I think we were talking about the first summer that you were at Trails, and James was there.
Yeah, James and I went all 3 years together. And so like really
Oh,
like my
James
whole
Vincent. Okay. So James
yeah,
Vanderpool told you about Trails,
me and
you and
James
James
Vincent
Vincent.
about
And then you
trips.
and James Vincent applied and were 3 summers.
Yeah, three
That's
summers in a
insane
row.
to me.
Oh, it was, yeah, I did a little, I think I was up there for during kind of like the winter for like 4 months doing
Uh-huh.
residency while Jake was up there when we were dating. And
Yeah.
so that was cool. I was so cold. I was like, it is too cold for me. I need to go home.
Well, yeah, being from Georgia, that is, and like it's funny because I feel like Indiana is like, it's really, really hot. When I go to Trails, I'm like, I don't know. So I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but so there was one year that I applied actually to be an intern for one summer. And what had happened was like all the internships, like they had everybody they needed. But Jerry still called me to like kind of see what was going on because my application, he was really nice. So we talked on the phone, but I was driving, but I wanted to take the call because like I like genuinely did want to be an intern. And because I had, I think I had met a couple of people at the metal museum that had entered, or maybe at Sloss. Anyway, so the word was getting out. It had a reputation, but I had missed like any open slots that they had or something. And so he was like, from your resume, it sounds like you're actually more like you're ready to be a visiting artist. You're not really
An
an
intern.
intern. And I was like, yeah, but Jerry, I don't have any money.
You're like, bro, I'm trying to pour metal and I can't afford that. Like, put me
Yeah.
in the trenches with everybody else.
And so then, but I was just in St. Louis, that's like 2.5 hours away or 3 hours away from, where they're at in Salisbury, Indiana. And so I was like, put me on your like backup list. If anybody gets sick or if anybody backs out at the last minute, call me and I'll come out and be an intern. And that was like kind of how we left it. Cause I don't think I had met him in person yet. It was just like that phone conversation. And then fast forward into whatever year that was. You're right. The metal museum, James brought he had just built Priscilla at the metal museum and he brought
Yeah.
it, and Katie, and I feel like Bob Rogers and
hmm
Charles Logan.
I remember that.
Right. And so I came out from St. Louis and helped them run it, not because they needed it, but because I was like, you guys are going to be.
Because it was fun.
And also it's like my first time at Trails. I think it was like a first, definitely not for Katie, but like it was the first, I think, for Bob Rogers and like Charles Logan. And so they were like, you should come. And so like I was like, okay, I got an official invite from somebody. And so I went, and it was so hot.
Yeah, it's
And it was
brutal.
like, and seeing like how much like the interns, they work their tails off. Like, I mean, they earn every single second of their fee.
Yeah, we
They are,
definitely got our butts kicked a little bit, but it's like for me, I like thrive in that. I like love working really hard. So I'm like,
yeah.
for me, I'm like, okay, let's do it. It's like well, maybe it's, I don't know. It's like I like a challenge. So
Yeah. Like it builds character. It shows you like what you're capable of. Like if you're capable
hmm
of that, of working that hard for that long, sleeping in a tent in the heat,
hmm
you're capable, like that proves you're capable of so much just physically.
yeah,
And then also like there's the emotional of like it's a really intense month and everybody's
yeah,
very
personality.
close. Yes, person. Yeah. And so I feel like it's like a character development, like unbelievable.
Yeah, I loved it. I was like, one year, I think we wrestled pigs at the Indiana State Fair.
What?
That's a highlight. I
What?
think
Whose pigs were?
they were at the Indiana State Fair, and I think it was not my team, but the other team won the whole state fair, and all the locals were pissed. We were like drunk and like not from there, and we
And
just
you
show up.
won.
I think it was April was on that team. April
Oh,
Livingston
yeah.
and Dave Main and Dan and maybe Alex. They're all
Yeah.
strong. April's like
Yeah. I could see
in
them
there with
being
them. It was like 2 seconds when I tell you that they picked this pig up and put it on the thing, and like it was so fast I almost missed it. I was like, okay. I can't really remember. My memory's very bad, but I'm like, I
No,
think
that's
those
good.
but that's a highlight. I like telling people that I wrestled pigs at the Indiana State Fair because I'm like, I earned my
Yeah.
stripe.
That's a point to be proud of for sure. So after I think like my first time at Trails, just visiting, just on the weekend, I was there for like 48 hours, just went in for like I think I got there Friday night and was there like all day Saturday and left on Sunday. And I was like, maybe I dodged a bullet. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I had the like if I had it in me to do. I mean, I also was older by then.
You would have like, you get into like the mania together. It's
The
like,
groove of it.
I think, I mean, at least I think that's what happened. I don't know. We definitely like lost our minds and had like all sorts of weird camp lore that we would make up. And it was just like so many fun people there. Like, and it definitely is cool now to see where everybody is. And we all like, we're interns at the same time, like me, Ian, and Katie, and
Yeah.
Jake, and James, and Alex, and Eleanor. Like in April, all of us kind of like did it multiple years together. I'm sure I'm like missing some people, but it was like, I don't know. It's just like a very special bond
Rob.
I'll always have. Rob, oh my God, I love
Yes.
him. Everyone's so nice though. So it's like
Yeah.
so fun. But I always like, I still never made much of my own work there because I was always just like helping other people. And then
Mm-hmm.
I've got bad anxiety. I don't like feeling watched. So I'm like, there's too many people around for me to make art. I'm like
Yeah.
too chaotic in my brain. And so I'd just hang out and
Yeah.
help
Well,
people.
also your job was to facilitate the paying artists in residence to make their art. So that makes sense. I mean, I've heard that story actually like pretty often that interns, they're doing their job, helping the artists that are paying make their work that they're there for.
Yeah.
I think it kind of, if you can squeak in something on the side, that's great, but it's definitely not to be not to be expected. So
No, I was like, I'm chilling. Oh yeah, there's so many people that were there multiple summers. Kristen,
yeah.
Robin, and Paul, and everyone.
Still now, like, I'll go and meet some people like, oh, that's the first time I've ever met this person at Trails Fire at Night. And then the next year I go back and they're like, they're still an intern, they're back again. And it's like,
Yeah,
they didn't get enough.
I
So there's
haven't been
something
back for a couple of years now,
I
but
feel
maybe I'll
like,
make my way back up there.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it gets probably in your blood a little bit for a while, but
Oh yeah,
we'll
I
find
felt like
that.
because also all 3 years I was dating Jake during interning, so it
Yeah.
was fun because I got to go up there and he's from there, so
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
was like another layer of fun during the summers because obviously long distance sucks, but
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was 3 years of that.
Mm-hmm.
4 years of resident, like no, 4 months. And then once we got iced into the cabin, I said, I'm going home. See you later.
Going where it's warm.
I'm not chopping wood every
Yeah.
day outside in the ice. Where like some people are made for the snow. I am not. My dad's from Puerto Rico. My mom is Sicilian. I'm from Atlanta. I'm an
Yeah.
island girl. Anything below 30 is very, very cold for me. I'm like, I'm not leaving the house. It's frozen out there. I
Yeah.
don't know what you think is going on. But as soon as these roads thaw, I'm going home back to my 40-degree winter.
Yep. Yeah. And I do, when I was at the University of Georgia, I did enjoy the mild winters. You got so much done,
Yeah,
because in
yeah.
the north, it's like, well, not so much like, I don't know about where that is in Indiana, but like in St. Louis, it's like, it starts to warm up pretty, but I was just up in Wisconsin last weekend for the Pouring Your Heart Out. It's like in
Cool.
Alyssa Toninato does from Feline Studios, and she does it's in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's like like kind of Valentine's-y themed or all of that, and
That's cute.
it's up there. It is so cold. It's like cold until the end of March. maybe it's like winter goes on forever. It starts in September
Uh-uh.
and goes, it's just
It's not for me. It's not for me. I can't even think about it. I'm
but
cold
it's
thinking
like,
about it.
at least that. Like my
Um,
mom still lives in Massachusetts and she's like, when can I come and visit you in St. Louis? I'm like, I know, because it's 62 degrees today. And she's like, oh, it's just people are where they are. But
yeah,
if
I
you
guess you get
know
used
that,
to it, maybe.
like, I think that knowing that and you're like, I'm in Atlanta, I'm happy, that's a gift. You're like, got it figured out. There's no question.
Oh
You're
yeah,
not,
I love Atlanta.
you're not
I love the
questioning it.
South. I'd only go further south, like
Yeah.
Miami. I could go there,
Yeah.
but Atlanta's good. I like it
Yeah.
here. It's like the hometown, you know.
So where are we now after trails? Or I mean, at that point
Oh
in your
yeah, I've been on
story.
like a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
I was like really hell bent about like leaving Georgia for a minute. So like my last semester at Georgia State, I just applied to like literally anything I could find, and I ended up going and doing an internship at a foundry in Berlin for like a month and a half, and then doing a residency in Denmark at a sculpture park there for a month and a half. And because like you can only stay 3 months without a visa, so I was trying to really like pack it in.
Yeah. So
And
what
so,
kind of work was that you were working? Like, what kind of foundries were they?
oh, it was the first like big bronze foundry I've ever seen, like way bigger than Inferno. Like we were making like a Henry Moore piece. It was huge. It was so cool because they had like it was also cool. There was like because there was like a lot of women working there too, or not a lot, but like a handful. And they had like a small wax studio, a big wax studio, a small mold room, a big mold room, then like big metal fab room, and then a smaller one. You know, because you do anything from like this big to like 20-foot monuments, so it's like crazy. And they had this one dude who was just like did all you know, because sometimes they'll hire us to do like the scale ups. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but like to
I
scale
think I
pieces
know what
up.
you like. I don't know any of the technical terms really. You know what I
Me
mean?
either. I don't know
But
anything. I like
I
taught
kind
myself how
of,
to weld on YouTube, so I'm like I don't know what's going
but
on.
when you say scale up, like I know what you're talking about. I think.
Yeah, like if people will give us a sculpture that's like you know like a cup, being like, okay, this is the sculpture I want. I just want it 10 feet tall, and
And
then
you're like,
we
got
have
it.
to we have to scale it up. But
Okay.
this guy did it all by himself in this room,
Hmm.
and he had like huge. Oh man, I'm like don't know any of the technical terms, but he would have like the little pieces, then have like all of the whole like pinpointing things. You know how people
Yeah.
used to carve marble and like scale stuff up back in the
No,
day, and
I don't.
and
But
he,
I'm with you.
it was all analog. There's no computer, and he did it all by himself and would do these like huge pieces just like by himself. And it was so cool, but no one spoke English, so I didn't really like.
Yeah.
No one really spoke English. It was actually really awkward the whole time I worked there, but I did my best to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
I got the internship, and I was like, cool, because I really, really wanted to go to Berlin. I had like that really set on my mind because I knew it was like a really cool art city.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just found this bronze foundry and I applied to it and got a little internship. And the experience was really cool, but I like, you know, went all the way to Berlin, got like a little apartment, was super excited. I showed up my first day at the foundry. I don't speak any German. I speak like a little Italian and a little Spanish, not much, especially after my concussion. They're very jumbled together and not really language anymore. But
Yeah.
so I went there for the first day, and everyone's like, "Oh, Guten Morgen," and I was like, "Wow, how do all these people know my name?" Literally, like Morgan means morning, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so awkward." And then I go to the office, and then like I was like, "Oh hi, like I'm Morgan, yeah, blah blah blah," and then their faces like dropped because they thought I was gonna be a guy, and then they talked about me for like
Oh.
20 minutes in front of my face whether they were gonna like fire me or not after I just moved to Germany for this job because I wasn't a dude. And I was like, cool, all right, like what the fuck. But then
Yeah.
eventually I like worked there, but it was awkward. I could tell they didn't want me to be
Yeah.
there. I was like,
What?
fuck it, I'm already here.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you do when you were there? Like, what did
I
you
got to
work on?
do like a little bit of everything, work through like the process because it's the first time I've ever worked at like a professional shop
Okay.
because I, you know, during school, we did like iron or like the speedy melts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I really was like focused on trying to either like put myself in a situation where I'm like working on my craftsmanship or like finding a place to where I can keep making my art where I'm not like spending money. If I can figure out how to do both at the same time, make money and make my art, it's like the end goal.
Yeah.
But I just really wanted to see the process of like big bronze sculptures. And now I'm so used to it because I've been at Inferno for 6 years that I'm like a little bit callous, being like, oh, only 10 feet, like whatever.
You're desensitized to
Yeah,
it.
I got to make these huge like green sand molds. I don't even know, it's really hard or they were natural sand, they weren't oil. I think they would bake it.
Okay.
But you can reuse the sand, like remill it and reuse it.
Cool.
And they used investment there, and you could remill the investment and then use it as backfilling. So it's actually like a really eco-friendly situation in comparison to what foundries can be.
Yeah.
Just cool. But so yeah, I did that for a month and a half, and it was very awkward, but it was really cool.
You got
Made the
through
most
it.
out of it.
Yeah.
I made no friends because no one would talk to me, but I still enjoyed it. You got to make the most of it and be like,
Yeah.
I'm already here. And so then I went to Denmark for a month and a half after that, and basically like lived at a place really similar to Trails, just like a lot less people. But it was like a little sculpture park in the woods in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And it was me and this one other resident artist lived there on site, and then people came during the day and had a bunch of different studios there. But we kind of like stayed there and helped like maintain the grounds. It's not open anymore, which kind of sucks, but it was really pretty because I used to go and like walk all the trails every day. But the other guy that lived there was he was probably like the nicest person. I also couldn't talk to him because he only spoke Arabic and Danish, because he was like a refugee who came, and his story was so inspiring, and he was so nice. He was like missing part of his hand from like a bomb or something. I can't like, I don't know the story to be able to like, only from people get together from him, and he like it is a refugee, that an immigrant now in Denmark, but he was just so happy, and he made bronze sculpture too, and we just like couldn't really communicate to each other, but every day he would make me these meat pies and then we'd watch happy YouTube videos together for like an hour every day, and I was like, I don't know what you're saying, but you're really nice, thanks for the meat pie. And so that was cool. And it was weird because it was like kind of in the winter time, so I was very cold, but also it gets dark at like 3:30 p.m. It's daylight for like 2 or 3 hours. And so you really gotta like get your groceries quick.
Yeah, before
I'm like right through the Danish countryside with my salmon in the pitch black. I'm like I don't even know where I am. I don't know how to talk to anybody. It'll be fine. I'm not gonna get murdered.
You survived. You survived.
Yeah, and I also felt the need to only watch scary movies the whole time I was working there, and I'm not sure why I did that, but maybe I was just like really leaning in to the plot.
Yeah.
Like really just
you just wanted to know all the things that could happen, so you'd be ready.
Yeah, especially because the sculpture studio is like, maybe like a 5 whatever minute walk from like the actual places that we stayed. So it was like pitch black, and I was like, perfect. Only work at nighttime and only watch scary movies. Then when you're done, walk back by yourself in the woods.
Terrified. Oh my gosh. So what type of work were you doing there?
I did like some ceramic stuff and some like really small welding and bronze stuff. I actually helped a lot with like some restoration of the sculptures just to be nice. And I shipped my ceramic stuff back, but it broke. They dropped the dog. So I was like, yeah, it's okay. I think it was like more for the experience, and I learned a lot, and I learned what not to not make at residencies. Yeah. I was like, I'm gonna make this cool ceramic piece and ship it back. And I was like, okay, cool. They completely mauled my box. Like my clothes, those are all fine. That box has never looked prettier, but this box is tore up, and my piece, I was able to kind of salvage it. And then I think that's when I did my 4 months up at the trails with Jake after that.
Okay.
Because I was trying to just like not be in Atlanta for a minute, because I'm from Atlanta as well. And so
I think it's pretty common to go through. Yeah, because it's like when I was done with So I grew up in Massachusetts, and then I went to college in Massachusetts. And then when they were like, "Oh, do you want to go to grad school? We think you're good enough," like the professors, I was like, "I'm getting out of here," And
Yeah.
so then I went to Georgia. It was like I had the choice between going to Georgia or Ohio. And I was like, I don't know, Georgia seems warmer.
Yeah,
And
you're
I
like
didn't
Georgia,
even
Athens.
I didn't
Athens is
even know
cool.
I didn't even know anything about like what I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Like what situation Athens is. Like I didn't know.
Yeah, it's
Like
definitely its own
huge
thing.
college party town. Like I didn't know that. And I think like my parents didn't know that either.
It was like voted the number one party school when I was in school. And all my friends, a lot of my friends went there, and I was like,
Yeah.
I can see why. I
We
can
had
see
a good
why.
time. I mean, we had a good time, and also like being a little bit older. Like I was 20, I was like mid 20s, like 23, 24, 25. And so we had a little bit, whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying. But anyways, yeah, I was like, I got to get out of Massachusetts. And then from there, I was going to kind of try and be like an academic gypsy and like go around. So I like got my first residency in St. Louis, and I'm still there.
Cool.
So that book was written, but I really miss Massachusetts. There's something about like where you grew up that
Yeah.
it takes a minute. You got to go out and spread your wings. But then like, I mean, we go back and I'm like, oh, but it's so beautiful. Like, yeah, I don't
You're
know.
like, I love it here. Well, it's got like the home charm, or
Like
like
I
the right
miss it.
smells and the right
Yeah.
like sounds. The birds sound like home, and you're like, oh.
Yes. Yeah. It's like there's these little things. So anyway, so
And then I think I went to Nashville after the trails because I did. My best friend was trying to get into film, and the film has just started getting really big in Atlanta at the time. And we worked on like an indie horror film in Nashville. We were doing like special effects and props.
mhm.
And I was like, I never thought I'd get hired to spray a fire extinguisher full of fake blood on someone, but like this is now a skill I have.
But hey,
I also
yeah.
didn't know fake blood in horror films smelled like vanilla, but it smells like vanilla. I was like, interesting. I also applied to grad school and was trying to
Mhm.
decide if I was going to go to grad school or not. I got waitlisted at RISD because I was going to do RISD and go for glass,
Mhm.
but I did very bad at the interview. So they waitlisted me, which is fine. I'm very awkward sometimes. And I was just like very out of my element and
Yeah.
didn't
I mean,
feel the vibes, and was just like, I'm claiming up and being weird. I can tell they think I'm being weird, and I'm definitely being weird. So
RISD, I think they're weird in their own way. It's just, if you
it was
felt,
so expensive too. I didn't
yeah.
realize how expensive it was, and I was like, it's just a no from me. Like I can't.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they didn't accept me, so I don't know why I'm acting like that was my choice. Uh, but after that, I was like, I don't know if grad school is like for me right now.
Yeah.
And so then I went back home and started like saving up money and stuff. And I did some film welding in like fabrication welding for Phil Proctor. I don't know if you know him, but Alan Peterson and him like share a studio.
I know that name. I definitely know Alan Peterson, but I know the name Phil Proctor.
Yeah,
I
he's
might
so
be
nice.
friends with him on Facebook.
Maybe he does like really big fabrication stuff. Like he's really cool. And so I kind of did like the on and off film welding for him for just a little bit, and then that's when I like transitioned into working at Inferno. And
Okay.
so I worked in Inferno for 6 years.
Okay. I don't know much about Inferno, which I have gotten heat for
Really?
because I went to school in Athens. So like sometimes
Oh,
I'm
Carl went to
viewed.
Athens. Yeah, like the second, or like Phil Hootzelman owns the shop, and then like Carl, he went to UGA, and he kind of has helped Phil create the shop and like run it for like decades at this point. And so
Yeah, somebody was like, "How do you not know about Inferno? Aren't you from Georgia?" And I was like, "Well, no,
you're like, no,
I'm."
I just went to grad school
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I was there for 3 years, and I was like, well,
And you were in
besides like,
Athens.
yeah, like I was in my studio doing my metalworking and
Like in
also
my
like
art.
iron casting, and then like, you know, having a good time on nights and weekends, you know. I didn't go into Atlanta all that much. And
No, well,
yeah.
also I went to Georgia State, and I never went to Inferno until after I
Mhm.
graduated and got a job there. So,
Mhm.
but I think like back in the day, George used to bring people there to do ceramic molds because we have ceramic shell there,
Okay.
and
Yeah, because
so he would bring students there to do shell molds
uh-huh.
when they needed to. I think, but that didn't happen when I was there.
Hmm.
So I worked there. I first started in the metal shop. I was in the metal shop for 3.5 years, chasing metal, sweating, or metal every day. It was fun. I learned so much. So it's all very valuable.
I can't even imagine. Like,
And maybe I worked there for 6.5 years
hmm.
because I did half the time in the metal shop and half the time in the mold room with Carl. And I've made molds, like hundreds of rubber molds. Like I feel like I could make a rubber mold in my sleep at this point. Like I'm like,
Well,
nothing scares me about mold making at this point, which is amazing.
that
I'm like,
is.
I have never met a mold I can't make at this point, but it's like, oh yeah, it was a lot of rubber, man. We'd be doing like 5 gallons every other day of rubber, pouring metal like every day. It was a lot,
Wow.
but you learn quick, which is
Well, so
cool.
tell me, because I don't know like anything about really like the industrial foundry. Like, what is it kind of a small? Is it considered like a small scale art, like
Yeah,
fine art?
Inferno is a fine art foundry. And so
Okay.
like I've only ever worked at like fine art foundries, not like an industrial plant or
Okay.
anything. But the one in
Hmm.
Berlin was definitely like probably three times the size of Inferno. And like
Okay.
there's probably like 30 employees there, where maybe 30, 35, maybe a little more than that. In
Hmm.
Inferno, I think at our height we had like 12 or 13.
Okay.
Then during the pandemic we cut down to like 4 or 5 of us, and that was
Yeah.
what it was.
It
But
happened a lot of places, I think. Yeah.
mhm. But it's yeah, so it's like you break down into department and you'll work
Okay.
certain sections of the job. And but because I make art, or like a few of the other people, I got the job through like Will Darnell. I don't know if you know him. He's at the trails. He's one of Paige's students from KSU.
Okay.
And he got me the job there. And he worked in the mold room. And then when he left the mold room, or left Inferno, I went up to the mold room,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
which is cool. I'm happy I got to move around. But
Yeah.
there's like mold room, wax room,
Uh-huh.
like there's a wax casting room, wax chasing room, and then there's like a spruing section, and there's a whole ceramic shell room. We have a big burnout kiln in the back, and then like the pit for the molds,
Hmm.
and the furnace, and like the whole big just kind of like open area metal
Okay.
working spot. And then we have like a shed in the back for patina and a shed for sandblasting.
Oh. So where do the jobs come from? Is it artists that are like providing waxes, or are
Mm-hmm.
they just providing
So
I
we're like outsourced craftsmen, basically.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Okay.
And on few occasions we get hired to like do the enlargements. That's the word I've been looking for. The
Okay.
enlargement, other people's sculptures, which
Hmm.
I had to do a few Willie Cole sculptures. And he's like, I don't know if you know who he is, but he does these like figures out of shoes, and he'll like sew the shoes together. And he's like, here. And they're really, really cool. And he's pretty
Yeah.
famous, but he's, getting older. And
Yeah.
also once you get so busy, you just can't do everything yourself.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
they were like, okay, Morgan, make this just 10 feet. I was like, no, don't make me carve shoes. And I was just sitting in there for probably like 4 months making all of these shoes. And it was just that one YouTube video playing in my head. Do you remember shoes? Oh my God, shoes.
No,
Do you
I'm
remember
gonna
that
look it
forever
up.
ago? It was like one of the first viral videos, and it's not worth listening to, but it was just stuck in my brain. And I cannot see his work without thinking of
Yeah.
that, me like covered in foam with this terrible YouTube song stuck in my head. And it's just like, things you didn't think you would be doing at some point
Yeah.
for your job. But it was cool. It
So
definitely
you
had
were
its highs
making them
and lows.
enlarging it in foam.
Yeah, and then I cover it in clay, or
Okay.
like, and then sculpt the details, then we mold that, and
In
then
rubber.
yeah, and then wax the shell to metal,
Got it.
then weld it
Okay.
back together.
Okay.
Am I going too fast?
I mean, I'm trying to keep up because it's like I don't have, you know, I don't
Yeah, I
have
feel like
the
I'm
background in that.
desensitized to it, so
It's
it's hard
okay
because
though.
I never went to grad school. I just ended up working in like the industry part of it
Yeah.
because I started when I first got this job. I was like super open with Phil, being like, okay, so like my art is my priority, and I like show a lot, and I basically worked there because I could have 24-hour access to the shop and industry cost of materials. And so, like, I'm not saying the pay was crazy, but it's like I wouldn't be able to afford that regardless if the pay was double what I was making. So it was kind of like trading time, but I also got to like learn and fail on other people's stuff while getting paid for it. I learned so much, and so, like, and learned a lot about pricing and timing and like the actual business side of being able to like maintain an actual career, which was really cool, especially when I worked up in the mold room. It was just like Phil and Carl and me up there. And so I'd always listen to them like price out projects and be like, okay, duly noted, like this much for a cubic foot, and this is like a proper time, and like this is the right price, and like, you know,
Yeah, that's a
trying to
great
like,
education.
yeah, so I got like a almost like a business education in a way, like
Yeah,
because
they
that's
wouldn't teach that at school because the professors wouldn't know that necessarily. No, I mean, like most of them have not had that type of experience.
well, it's, I mean, not that many people have, and it's like it was a very craft based experience, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
especially in the metal shop when I first started working there, they were definitely pretty hard on me, and like of course I like had to teach myself how to TIG weld on YouTube because no one would teach me how. And I was like, it's fine, I got it, but like I don't want to make it sound like that because I like love Phil so much, and it's like
Yeah,
not him at all.
yeah.
But like
Well, but
the other
everybody's
dude,
busy and
everyone's
they're not a
busy.
school,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
so,
So
and also they only have so much time. They're like, okay, like this is kind of how you do it. Figure it out.
yeah, do it on the other side until you get good, right?
Yeah.
Like
And so
figure it
I
out.
would like
Yeah,
stay late and weld vents together. That's how I learned because I was like, I don't want to touch other people's pieces and stuff. And eventually you get good, but part of the metal shop that was pretty difficult for me was that like you having to deal with clients when they're coming in, like checking the pieces before you patina them. And I like had a lot of people be very rude to me because I was like a woman and younger than everyone else that worked there. They were just like, I had some very negative experiences, and it
yeah.
just sucks.
I can imagine, or I can, yeah,
Yeah,
I
especially
can,
like
yeah.
older women clients because some of the
Really,
I had a lady literally spit in my face and cuss
shame
me out.
on that.
She was trying to make a little mini stand using TIG rod to hold her piece up, which is fine, annoying to weld TIG rod together, but whatever. I'm getting
Yeah.
paid to do it and do it. And she wanted a cast iron TIG rod. And I was trying to explain to her that that's not a thing, my girl. You don't even want that. If that was somehow
No, and it's
mysteriously a
not.
thing, you
Yeah.
would flip that and it would break in half. Like that's not what you want. I'm gonna do some like mild steel and then
Yeah.
patina it to make it look like cast iron.
Yeah.
And I was trying to like explain that to her, but I think she just said like one of the dudes that worked there for a while was like a dude who I guess like Phil knew through some foundry in
Mm-hmm.
Louisville who came down, and he's like an older veteran dude, and he had like a pretty bad temper, and he's kind of a fucking asshole sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he was having a bad day and was being rude to this lady outside in the patina
Okay.
in the patina situation, and but she took it out on me because I'm like the
Yeah.
only person she feels like she has authority over. I
Mm-hmm.
think in her situation because I'm younger and like one of the only women there,
Yeah.
and so she like I was like, okay, what I'm gonna do for you, I just want to let you know like what I'm doing. Like this isn't cast iron rod. Well, and she's like, I don't need a fucking lecture from you, and like spit in my face, and I was just sitting there
Oh
like
my God.
I just put the pieces down and left. I was like, it's a no from me. But like Phil told her
Yeah.
not to come back, which was cool. But
Good.
Yeah, it's just like, but I'm like, you're just projecting, you're upset with this man and you don't feel comfortable like standing up to him. I'm not doing anything. I'm not giving you a lecture. I'm trying to like teach you so people don't rip you off
Mm-hmm.
at other shops. You know, I just want you to know what you're getting and what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
and
You
being
don't sound
transparent. Yeah,
asking for cast iron TIG rod at the next shop you go to because it doesn't
doesn't
exist.
exist. Yeah.
But yeah, then I had other artists. Like I was doing a bunch of like 10 figures for this dude, and it was me and the grumpy old veteran who were like
Yeah.
in the metal shop at the same time, but he was out of town, and so I had like all my finished ones I was putting on his desk because it was all too much stuff for my desk. And
Yeah.
then the guy came in and but only had problems with the finished ones that were in my section, had no problems with the finished ones on his table, even though I did all of them.
Ah,
And I
that's
was like,
so bad.
okay. Then he was like, I just like really want a real artist to do my stuff, and I know you're not like a real artist. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll happily go home. You can do it. Do you want to weld this yourself? Here, sweetheart, you got it. I'm going home. But yeah, and then,
Wild.
but it's not like I can like say much because I know they're
No.
like clients, and I'm
Yep.
like, you know,
You're
I don't know,
representing the
definitely trying
company.
to be an
Yeah.
asshole, but also I like try very hard to like not let people get me out of pocket. Kind of like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
don't have the power to get me that upset, but also like it's very like okay. And then
I mean,
I went,
sometimes enough is enough. Like you're like, mm-mm.
yeah, I just leave. I'm like, I'll see myself out of this situation. I'm gonna go home and get paid for the rest of the day. I'll see you later. And yeah, and then I think like maybe a week or so after that, I'd left and went to do a performance with George and Susie Rauer in Berlin.
Okay.
And I had a piece that I was showing over there and stuff. And then I guess he came in because he was going to apologize to me because he knew he was like really rude, which was cool. And then I guess he found out I was showing in Berlin. And then the next time he came in and saw me, he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were showing in Berlin. Like, what gallery were you at? Blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Do you really think I'm going to like hook you, like, give you any contacts after you just treated me like I was like beneath you and
Yeah.
like not good enough?" And then he asked me to model for his nude sculptures.
Oh, that's flattering, right? Or
And I was like,
yeah,
"What?
it's a flattering request. You're
Like that's
pretty
a
enough.
lot. You really took over the whole
Yeah.
map here, my guy. Like, what?" I was like, "You think I'm gonna do that with you after you're super rude? I already feel uncomfortable. I'm gonna
Yeah.
model and then send it through the shop that I work at with all
Yeah.
of my male coworkers, and that's not gonna be the weirdest experience that's ever happened to me." Like, oh, don't
Yeah.
worry about it. Like, I don't know, just weird. People are weird.
People are. And it sounds like in that arena where you were, you kind of saw even weirder. Like you wouldn't necessarily witness that person or these people kind of acting like this in the grocery store. I mean, you're
Well,
looking, but
it's
it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's like because they're entitled because they're paying for a
well, it
service.
is super expensive and it's
So,
people's art. So I do empathize with it because I'm like, it is really expensive to pay the foundry to cast your stuff. And
mhm,
I'm very particular with my work. So I get that. But
mhm.
it's definitely one of those situations where I'm like, everybody should work at a foundry before they start casting the pieces at a foundry because
Yeah.
like you don't know what you're asking us, how hard what you're
Yeah.
asking me to do is in like 5 minutes while you're like standing over me,
Yeah.
breathing down my neck. But some people were super, super nice and I
Mhm.
learned a lot. And
Yeah. Tell me about like the one of the favorite things because I want to balance out. Like you told us some like some some ugly underarm kind of
oh
stories,
yeah,
and that's but it's like important to hear that, and I found it very
yeah, it's part of my
interesting.
experience is like, yeah,
But
having to deal with a lot of people's projection onto me. And
yeah,
I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to like make money to eat and pay my bills. So
and
I'll
make
see
your
you
own
later.
art. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make my own art. Well, man, I don't know. I really loved a lot of the people that I worked with. They're just like, especially over 6 years, became like my family, especially the two dudes who worked downstairs in the metal shop with me, always were like so nice and so willing to help me. And I think like I was always so grateful for how supportive everybody was for my work. And like, so would always be like, okay, you have a show, like go ahead and go do it. And he's like, oh, your deadline's then. And they're like, like be so happy. And like when I finally quit, they were all like really proud of me, which was like super cool. It was a cool experience to be able to like work there for that long, still maintain like a really good relationship. And like now I'm a client, which is crazy. And it's like very cool. I just like really appreciate my time there because I learned, I mean, there's so many good things that very much outweighs the bad, but I got to like constantly be challenged every day. I learned new stuff. I like feel very confident in my craft at this point where I'm like, I always enjoyed doing like really big pieces because it's just interesting to, we did, I think our biggest one was like a 20-foot piece for the Met Stadium that we did like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's cool because it's just stuff I would never, or like now that I've done it and been a craftsman on so many large pieces, now I can bid them really accurately. And I can really understand how much time, money, space, like it's going to take. Otherwise, I would have been like the most unrealistic.
As many of us are, because we haven't
I'm like, or like, it was an interesting approach because I definitely thought I would end up going to grad school, but then I kept being like, okay, well, if I can make my money in my art, I have a full-time studio I wouldn't be able to pay for.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid to learn.
Yeah.
And like I have access to all this stuff that I wouldn't even have access to out of school. And so I kind of just like fell into my little nook and did the most with what I had. I got my money's worth out of having a free studio there 100%.
So let's talk about the last couple of months then since leaving. And so you set up this show and tell me where it is again, because I don't remember.
University of South Carolina. So it's my first university solo, but it's at their upstate campus. So it's in Spartanburg.
Okay.
And so, like 6 or maybe it's 8 months. My concept of time doesn't really exist. I don't know. Some point last year, I could feel myself getting really burnt out at the shop. You know what I mean? Like, when you can feel your time is up somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, I'm very much like, I'm not great at planning, but I always do what feels right, and I could feel my time being up there, but I also was like, it is like my safety net. I like only can afford to make art. Like I can cast my stuff. Like, what am I going to do? Is definitely scary, but I've been lucky enough to be consistently selling work kind of since I've been making it, which is nice. And especially for all those years getting industry costs on all my rubber and metal and everything, I was able to like, be making decent money plus working full time plus whatever random jobs I would take. And then, but it's always been like not really enough to be like, okay, I'm going to go for it full time. But then the beginning of last year, I got a 10-piece commission for the owner of MailChimp commissioned me to do 10 pieces for their penthouse in Buckhead. And I charged them like, I was like, okay. And they didn't blink twice. And I was like, okay, I'm quitting my job.
Yeah.
And I'm going for it. And so I made all 10 of those and then got ready, which helped me get ready for this solo show and this solo show coming up. And I'm just kind of like riding the wave now. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to like have faith and just like keep going and hope for the best.
Yeah. And it will be the best. And you're doing it. You're doing the thing.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's not easy, but it's cool because it's like, I think for all of us, especially with such like a tangible medium, right? Like to look back on my first molds was like, I think I made my first mold 11 years ago this week. And I'm like, because I have my little time hop or like, and I was
on the phone. Yeah.
I was taking mold making, or maybe it was like last month. Yeah, it would be last month because that's January. I was making my first mold like 11 years ago. And I'm like, wow, like going from like this plaster mold that for some, I'm very ballsy and I just like think I can do anything. And I really mess everything up all the time. And I just like fail forward and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make my first mold a multi-part 9-part mold, and I'm gonna like pour 4 parts at the same time. And my teacher was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I don't know how to make mold." So I was trying to make this like multi-faced head, but I was
Uh-huh.
using like a bucket, and I like did my part lines out of foam. Like it worked, but I didn't glue the bucket down enough. So I'll never forget. It was like I think it was like it was right after I finally transferred into sculpture. Like I'd only met, you know, the sculpture students once. I probably only met James, and his brother was also a sculpture major, once or twice. And they came in to me sitting in the middle of the studio floor covered in plaster with like literally like probably 50 pounds of wet plaster all around me on the floor. And I was just sitting there like, okay. Well, I definitely learned my lesson
Yep.
on how to not do that again. But I finished it. I did it again and finished it. And it's like so funny to think about like my first mold experience being like the biggest failure. And I was like, okay. But I got it. I've figured it out. Now I can make like 20-foot monument molds. And that's cool.
That's a long way to come. You know.
Yeah, a lot of paintbrushes.
And I bet a lot of people haven't followed that trajectory because they didn't have the experiences that you had with the time and expertise of the other people around you, you know.
It's quite it was like literally my profession. I did it for every day for years.
Yeah.
So
like I am. And so you learned it more thoroughly than if you had gone to school.
Oh, definitely.
Focus. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
I have like a super craft-based practice, definitely, where I'm like now hyper anal about my craftsmanship being very good because I'm like, you know, because everyone was really hard on me when I first started working there, but I'm okay with it because it only makes me better, you know.
Yeah.
I'm fine with being hard on me because I'm like, okay, you're only making me better in the end. So it's all good. But yeah, it was funny because I got the commission pieces. I sent them through the shop just because I like obviously can't do everything. And I remember going back there and they were trying to give me all these pieces and I was like, y'all would never let me give these pieces to a guy. You're trying to give them to me. I was like, that's not cool. But you know, it's part of that's like I hate being held to a different standard, but then at the same time it's like, well, being held to a different standard only benefited me positively in the end.
Yeah.
But it is kind of annoying.
I mean, and now though you can have the final say on what the craftsmanship is.
Oh, I'm very,
you know. Yeah, good.
But also I'm like, I can also do it. So if it's like really nitpicky and annoying.
Yeah. But if you're paying for a certain level of, you know, finish, you know. Don't. But I'm sure you don't need me to tell you not to cut yourself.
Yeah, I'm too nice because they're my friends. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to. I could tell one of the castings they had just like remade the shell, and so it had a lot of burden in parts of it. And I was like, I know too much. Now I know exactly what's going on over here. I know what all the problems are.
Yeah, you're spoiled with your knowledge, and so you can call them out.
Very, very lucky, but also it's like interesting because it's like you get so used to a certain process and like a certain way that it's like I have never even seen like the slurry and stuff, the yellow stuff. Like I've seen it like once where people dip it and it like is yellow, then it dries white or something.
Okay.
Like I've only ever done shell at Inferno. And so it's cool, but it's also like I don't know how that like knowledge transfers to like other slurries and other
I don't. And I've never done shell ever. So I can't I have nothing to say.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game. I mean, I love it because I like making like really intricate, super detailed. So for me, it's like, I don't know if I'll be able to do sand molds again if I have access to that.
But it's like everybody.
I could do sand molds.
You can.
I haven't rammed a sand mold in a very long time. I'd probably be embarrassingly bad at
it. It's kind of like riding a bike. I was talking to somebody about it a little while ago. It's like it would come, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember this, especially how much you probably rammed at trails. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, I've been making other people's art for them for so long. I'm like, I'm so ready to make not other people's art for them every day. It's like a discipline it definitely like helped me really center myself in my practice to like always prioritize my work
Yeah.
and be like, okay, you show up and feel guilty for being late when you're late to work because other people are holding you accountable, but you don't feel that guilty when you're late to your own studio and you're showing up for yourself. Like, you're the most important person to you. Your dreams are more important than this other person's job. You know what I mean? Like, you should feel just as guilty, if not more guilty, for not showing up for yourself
Yeah.
than you should for being late to work or being whatever. So like, really like tried to like create a mindset for myself to where I could like work at a foundry for 9 hours and then go work in my studio for like 8 hours afterwards. And, like,
Yeah.
I work really crazy hours, but
That's what it takes.
I get lost in, I get lost in the sauce a little bit in the studio high sometimes where you're just kind of like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
body's moving and it works out.
And it's
And
just
you're like, oh, I
happening.
believe it's been 7 hours. Cool.
I mean, and also it's like we deserve that. I mean, we can't always give it to ourselves, but I get in the flow and it's like, this is why I'm like, in a way, it's like, this is one of the things that makes life worthwhile is to get into the studio flow, or like I get into it when I'm editing videos a lot of times, but the videos that I edit are of me making my art. And it's just like a different avenue to communicate, and show what I'm making and how I'm making, like, the process. So it's like I definitely get into that, and then I'll be like, there's no way it's been 6 hours. And it just
That's
has been.
cool.
It just happens. And you're like, oh my
I'm
God,
very bad at documenting anything like that.
but it's like it's like everybody's different about what's important and what needs to be documented. And
People
I
would be
may
like,
over document.
what are you doing? Because I just like really get a wild hair. I'm very impulsive. So I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. And then I'll just like, blow things up. And I'm like, that wasn't a good idea. Okay.
But
We
you
learned
gotta
something
learn
new
it. You gotta learn it.
today.
So I feel like you just unknowingly gave us like a little tidbit of advice.
Oh.
Because you were like, you would show up, when you were giving your kind of like talk about
Oh,
how
right.
you would show up for work and you'd feel guilty because people are holding you accountable. So that is really good, I feel like, advice. And so
Yeah,
I want to talk about maybe if you have some more advice, but let's talk about what you have hot on the horizon.
Woo.
So
Yeah,
you're
I
going to
have my
deinstall the show in North
University of
Carolina.
South Carolina.
Oh, South
South Carolina. And I confuse them all the time. The Carolinas.
Yes.
And then I'm bringing the new work I'm making to install a solo at the Metal Museum. I'm super excited. It's my first little museum solo show. So we're
Tributaries
cooking.
show.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. It's such a compliment.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you
like,
earned
oh,
it. You deserve it. I mean,
thank you.
when I read that, the little blurb that I say at the beginning of the podcast, and I like read that you were having a Tributaries show, I was like, I was not surprised. I wasn't surprised.
Oh, thank
Well, because I
you.
think I had seen on Instagram you setting up the other show, and then I saw that this one was going to be opening. It opens in February. Wait.
April. Well, my solo opens in April, but I think that group show opens before
Right.
mine.
Yes.
So they'll be open at the same time, but my opening is April 21st.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
I'll probably come up for fire. That way I can like hang out and enjoy. I haven't been to a conference in so long. I'm like, I need to come and have fun.
Well, also, like, the pandemic happened. Like, a lot of us hadn't been to conferences for like I didn't cast anything from
Yeah, that
like
was an interesting time.
2019 until 2022. Like
Yeah,
legit.
it was an interesting time to be making historical public art monuments during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, I can't even
It's
imagine.
like, it's always something you're like aware of, especially because, like, luckily we do a lot of really cool stuff at Inferno. We did a lot of people of color and women, which is super cool. But also, their Phil would be like, some dude just called me trying to get me to see if we'd fix a Confederate monument. We're like, no. But like, luckily, he's not about that either.
Yeah.
But kind of interesting situation because it's like, well, what do? Do you refuse to work on something and like not get paid for that week? Or do you help create something that's like potentially not potentially harmful, that is harmful
Yeah.
for people? So it's kind of like sucks, but I was never really put in that situation. There were a few monuments that we did that I was like, ugh, we did this like very large native statue. But the problem with it was that it was like, at least what I found a bit problematic about it was that it was like the model for the statue was like they used a white guy as the model and a white man sculpted it, and they didn't like
it wasn't really, from what I am hearing, is it wasn't really a respectful representation
of someone else's community, which is like, I don't have a problem with whoever sculpting whatever, but like if you're going to be representing something for a cultural community, you should at least talk to them.
Yeah.
You should at least be like, is this who you guys want us to make? Because they were like, no, he's awesome because he helped show Oglethorpe around Georgia. I'm like, oh, so he helped colonize Georgia?
Great.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, but then part of it is also like the double-edged sword of like, it still is the biggest native monument in the Southeast. So with no native monument, there isn't that conversation. But with that monument, even though it's not perfect, it allows a conversation to be had and to be able to like transition into like better representational art for like other communities. So it's like interesting, because I was like, I don't really make this, but then also I'm like, okay, well, like it's a double-edged sword. This one's not so bad.
Yeah. Wild. And that's
Weird.
stuff that like isn't even on my radar, that you would have to, that one in a foundry would have to navigate those choices and figure out kind of where your self morals. I mean, you weren't because you were.
Yeah, I was luckily like not put in a situation to where that was like, I would, I definitely would not make something that I would be like, but that was the most touchy one. But I also think it's like, like, I'm trying to see like both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
Because like everything's a gray area. Not all public art's can be good for everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think at least starting the conversation ends up being a more of a positive thing in the end.
Yeah.
But who am I to know? Because it's also not my community to talk about, but it's like a very weird space to navigate.
Yeah. Line. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, public art curation is a whole beast. I'm like, oh, it's got to be a stressful job.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Well, so we talked about what you got hot on the horizon, the metals show. Right. Anything else that you want to talk about, or is it all, because it's like that's enough. That's a lot of work. So you're making a new piece for that show, gonna deinstall, bring it over there. That's a lot.
Yeah, bringing over a bunch of pieces, and I have a few things, but nothing has fully come through yet. So it's kind of like, I feel like if I speak on things and I gotta like pretend like they don't exist, and then I get them. If I get too excited about stuff, it never comes through. So I'm like, I gotta just like pretend like.
Yep, I've got something like that right now. Something that I really, really want to have happen, and I'm working on it. But if it happens, it happens, and that will be exciting. And if not, something else will follow. Something will. We get what we need.
Yeah, I think
not necessarily what we think we need, but in the end, like looking back, it's like I did get what I needed. So
yeah, I think that I definitely agree with that. Where it's like, there's been a lot of times that I've felt like, like really frustrated because I was like always ready to like get the next big commission, or like, man, I probably applied to like maybe 300 things and been accepted to like 4. I'm not even kidding. I don't get accepted to anything, but somehow it all works out and it's fine. But it's like,
and you have a tributary show, and you might be like one of the first. I don't know, because I don't know their whole tributaries catalog, but you might be one of the first casting.
Oh, I'm going to go very hard in the casting.
Like tributary, like, that.
Yeah, shown. Maybe. It's so cool that it's up during the casting group show too. I was like, no way. I had no idea until I had the
And
meeting.
during well, when does it come? How long is it up for?
Until July 7th.
Okay.
April to July.
So it'll be up for fire. So everybody that comes to the fire conference will get to see it too. That's really cool.
Exciting. I feel like a lot of people haven't seen my art in person.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, like I think before we started recording, but I've seen, because we were on the steering committee for SLOSS for 2 conferences, and I know that you had pieces in the steering committee exhibitions. So I've definitely
I've had a few
installed them. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, what did I put in? I can't remember. My memory is very bad.
There's like 2 heads like turned towards each other.
Yeah.
And one kind of had like maybe wrapping around.
Yeah, it was like 2 fabric mouths holding each other.
And I think that was the 2019.
I love mouths. I make a lot of mouths.
Yeah. They're intriguing.
Yeah, they're cool. But I think the taste buds of metal look cool.
The what? The what?
I said, like, I think like what I love about mold making so much is like texture transfer. So like I really like making mouths because like taste buds in metal, they look like tongues, they still look so soft, but it's super hard and weird.
Yeah.
And just like anything that shouldn't be hard, I like seeing it in metal. Yeah. It's like
I love that's great. That's a great concept. Because so recently I just started making a lot of food. I don't know. We can talk about it in the after show, or we cannot talk about it. But yeah, so I made some cast iron waffles.
Amazing.
And like, yeah, it's like something that usually you'd think like a big fluffy Belgian waffle that you make, you're at a hotel and then the next day you go down and you make yourself a waffle and you think about like biting into it, but it's cast iron and it's cold and it's like, but
I
still
love food
like
and metal.
Chunky. Like it's like there's something like really,
because it's so familiar but so unfamiliar at the same time, where it's like I enjoy playing with like the perception of things feeling very real and soft, and you're like, but it's 50 pounds. Why is this waffle so heavy?
Yeah. Or like another thing I did recently was I cashed a Hershey's chocolate bar. I don't know. And then I wrapped it like in tin foil because I gave it to my mother-in-law for Christmas. And but holding the cast iron Hershey's, like at first it's just like, oh, it's a candy bar. And I wrapped it in wrapping paper with the tin foil. And then when you actually pick it up, you're like, oh, wow, this is way heavier. And you can still feel the little, like, it was just so cool to experience other people experiencing it and being like, oh, wow, this is definitely, I thought it, it's deceiving until you actually have it in your hand. And then you're like, this is 5 times heavier than it would be.
I love that. I bet everyone was like, whoa.
I mean, they knew because they had seen pictures of the raw casting, so they like knew what was up, but so they're like trivets for the table. I put felt on the back of it.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know what I'm doing and why I'm
You're just doing what makes you feel good. I feel
like
I think like being an artist is like just like standing in your truth of whatever like art is true to you at that moment. Like, you know what I mean? I think that it's very easy to feel like pressured to be making like some certain type of art. Like some people are just craftsmen and some people love the craft of making sculpture and metal casting, and like that's awesome. Some people are super into being gallery artists. Some people like doing both. Some people like building furnaces. Some people like mold making. I don't think like needs to be this like rigid thing. Like especially fun to make stuff that isn't super serious sometimes when you're used to being like, okay, this has to be like a gallery piece, it has to be perfect, so much pressure where you're like, now I'm gonna make a cool candy bar and it's gonna be fun and it's gonna feel good to make.
Or like being in grad school and it's like, what is your intention? What is the importance of the material? Does it have to be in cast iron? And all of that.
That question.
Well, it's kind of like I did that. I did that. I did the grad school dance and I did it honestly, like, okay, this is about juxtaposition and gender roles and perceived Western behaviors of like, I did it. And I made work about it. And then like over 10 years later, I'm casting chocolate chip cookies, like whatever,
Live
man.
your life.
And
It's like you
maybe
did both.
if I cast enough, I'll figure out what it means. Like I'll
Yeah.
figure out why I'm drawn to this. We lost connection, folks, for a second. But
Yeah.
now we're back. And that's it. That's all we need to explain. But we were at a good time to start talking about your advice.
Mm.
And I feel like what we were talking about before about show up for yourself, don't be late for yourself, like
Yeah.
put in the hours, that was really good advice.
Yeah, I think like that's definitely the main advice I could give anyone is to like I mean it just takes a lot of discipline and dedication. I think like it was important for me to be like I work full time, but I'm going to the studio at least 3 nights a week after work, no matter what. And like, I would never not do 3 nights. Like, I would miss other stuff to make sure because I'm like, this is what I want to be doing in the future. I want to be making my own art for myself. And so that's not going to happen if I like keep being like, oh, I'm tired or like, blah, blah, like that should be my priority and everything else like falls in to like make sure that makes it happen, in a way. And so I've always been like very dedicated, but I also think like or like disciplined, but I also think like I've been working very crazy hours for like, like playing on like 5 sports teams forever. And then like going to college, working multiple jobs in a studio. Like I'm just like very used to being like, but it's what I love to do. So it's not that hard to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Showing up for yourself, I think, is important. I think, like what we talked about earlier, is to not feel pressured to let society's stereotypes define who you are within your like art practice. I think that's really important because, like, the more you are who you are, the more you're like helping other people feel comfortable within like a shared space. And because I'm like, like seeing you're like the first girly girl that I saw, and I was like, cool, okay, but it's like more people who are just like authentically themselves allows more space for everybody else to be like comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit of an intimidating environment, especially if you don't grow up around like, no one in my family does metal sculpture. So it's like a whole new environment. It's a little intimidating. It can be
It
intimidating.
can be. Yeah.
Then I think depending on what you want your art practice to be or what your end goals to be, like for me, I want to be like making gallery work, but like I'm very, very like hell-bent against like letting my practice be defined by capitalism and like by
Yeah.
making money. Like I always want to be making a situation to where like I'm not catering my creativity to what I think other people are going to like and what's going to sell.
Good.
Because eventually I have been able to like create my own style and my own voice. Now like people are hiring me to make my own art, which is like the number one thing that you want to be doing. But it's hard it's really hard when you're young and you're like, yeah, I can make that, or I can make this, or, commissions. I don't do commissions that aren't in my style anymore.
I like
learned
that.
lesson. I learned that lesson the hard way too many times. Where I'm like, no, we're not like gonna try and think of the same thing together, and it's never gonna be what you want. And it's like, I'm doing this because I need money, and so now it's like, no, I only like will make my type of art, which is cool that I'm in a position that's even an option. But
you earned that. You worked
yeah,
really hard, and you
I
earned
did.
that, and you deserve
I
it.
know. Thanks. It's cool. I'm excited, or just think in general, I find like so many people within like the metal casting community really inspiring. Everyone is such a hard worker and everyone's really resilient, which I find like very cool. Like you got to be okay with your mold blowing up, and you got to just be able to like take it on the chin. You have to be able to like take it on the chin to be able to be a metal caster and like keep moving, which is like a very good life lesson in itself. Like sometimes your mold blows up.
It
And
does.
sometimes you just gotta like drink a beer about it and move on and then make them all again.
Yeah.
You
if you want to, or maybe,
or maybe you just don't do it again. But yeah, I think being able to redefine failure, the
Mm-hmm.
perspective you have on things that feel like failure to
Yeah.
yourself, for being like, oh, these people are being hard on me, but it's only making me better. So it's actually a blessing. Or like, these things blew up, but now I don't have to learn that. Like, I already learned that lesson twice. I don't need to learn it again.
Yeah.
Where it's like, try not like let yourself get like bogged down
Mm-hmm.
with the minutia, and just being like trying to see how it benefits you rather than how it doesn't, because like maybe that's just something I've had to do because I like mess everything up all the time. I'm just like, it'll be fine, and then it's not fine, and I'm like, okay.
But then you know what you want to do to make it better or make it, yeah. And so it's like
Yeah,
you learn twice as much from every failure than a
yeah, you're failing
success,
forward. That's what I
Yeah.
like to say. I'm like, it'll be fine.
Well, okay, that's great advice. And I think it's time for us to go on to the after show. Wait, let me make sure I didn't miss anything important. Is there anything like that you want that to cover in the public episode that I haven't asked you about? Anything? I just want to make sure I don't miss anything important.
Maybe I'll just give like a brief summary of my work, and then we'll go to like the
Yes. I
after
love
show.
that. I love that.
Okay, so let me try to. I'm better at writing it than saying it sometimes, but I am interested in memory, because of when I lost my memory. I kind of got really interested in the physicality of what memory would look like. And so I make these like fleeting, fragmented moments of memory, kind of like mimicking what it's like when I have vertigo a little bit. And have gotten really into the structural similarities in between the neurological structures in the brain and like astrological phenomena, kind of like constellations in theoretical physics. And so I've been comparing and contrasting communal and individual memory through comparing and contrasting the structural similarities in between the brain and like the universe, and creating these sculptures that highlight like individual experience within shared spaces, which is cool for me, where it's like we all can experience like the same conference, but we all have had this completely different experiences within the same experience. And I don't know, I just am very interested in memory and the way it works, and like how structures within like nature repeat themselves like endlessly. It's all the same stuff. It's like literally laid out the exact same way. Information moves the same way, like just on like a macro versus micro scale, and kind of just like how it all flows together. And so at the Metal Museum is kind of like expanding on that. It's called like It's All Relative, and it's kind of a nod at the theory of general relativity, and how like experience and time and memory is relative for everybody. And so it's cool. It's been fun. I've been like nerding out and teaching myself quantum physics as a hobby recently, and it's been not what I thought. It's cool. It's interesting, and so we'll see where it goes. I'm better at writing about it and talking about it, but yeah, memory, time, space, experience.
I'm excited
Yeah.
to see the show. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So everybody listening and watching, we're going to go on over to the after show. Oh, we have to figure out, do you have something in mind that you want to talk about so we can tease it a little bit? I feel like there was something I was going to tell you.
Oh,
Maybe not. Oh, I wanted to tell the story about the trophies that you made the chairs of the national conference in 20.
me and Miranda.
Yeah, wait,
We made.
in 2017. Well, I want to talk about those in the after
Okay,
show.
we can talk about
Okay,
those.
okay.
Who are the chairs? Was it Marshall and Margie?
Yeah, it was yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk
We
about
can
that.
do that. Yeah.
Cuz that's one of my favorite memories. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it then in the after show. But so yeah, I didn't know maybe if you had any trails memories or anything. I mean, really, we can talk.
Oh, I
It's
have a lot of trails memories, but
okay. We'll just leave
yeah,
it open-ended and just
some
tease that.
good stories.
Okay. So we'll just tease that. But I want to thank you publicly, Morgan. Thanks so much for, like we talked about before, I kind of contacted you last minute when I found out that you were going to have the show at the Metal Museum. And I was like, let's get you on the podcast so you can talk about your work and talk about the show and your path and everything. And so I'm really glad that with pretty much like with 1 week's notice, you were like, all right, Tuesday night, let's go. So
Nice. Yeah, well, thanks for being interested. It's cool. It's like fun, especially when now I don't work with anyone who does cast metal really over here. So it's fun to talk about, especially with people who kind of know what I'm talking about
yeah.
and aren't like once I'm old. And I'm like, oh
Oh, oh boy. Yeah. I
man.
have those like
For,
conversations
don't
with,
worry about it.
and I'm like, so how much time do you have? Because
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, never mind.
this isn't just talking about making an apple pie. This is like, anyways. So thank you so much. And I'm excited to keep on talking to you though, when we go over to the
Yeah.
after show. All right. So everybody, thanks. And you know what to do. Come over to Patreon if you want to see the rest of the after show. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. This conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where Morgan and I continue our discussion, visit the website patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And for as little as $1 a month, supporters get access to the after show recordings from each episode that's ever been published. So if you're new here, then the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest, where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. And since it's not super public, sometimes the stories are quite spicy, like today. So yes, if you sign up, you'll get access to listen to the after show from this episode with Morgan and all of the other shows from all of our earlier episodes. And even $1 really will make a difference to subsidize the cost that I undertake to make this resource publicly available on, podcast players and on YouTube. And so you also, if you are on Patreon, will get the private after shows. So it's a win for everyone. Well, in conclusion of this public portion of the episode, I hope that you enjoyed listening to the interview as much as I enjoyed talking with Morgan. Her leap into self-employment is courageous and inspiring. It's an example to all of us that if you put in the work and dedication at a certain point, you'll be able to make amazing things happen. Morgan, congratulations on all of your recent exhibitions, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and fill us in on your life and your creative path as you travel it. You're already achieving incredible things, and it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep getting even better, and I can't wait to see what you achieve in the years to come. And now, one last thank you to our top supporters of the episode for helping me to continue to offer this show. Thank you to the Metal Museum for your support of this podcast and for offering our cast iron art community such an amazing exhibition and learning opportunities, as well as foundry apprenticeships. In my opinion, the Metal Museum is one of the premier places in the world to learn the art of iron casting, and to have a museum of this caliber exhibitioning works by artists in our tribe, it's such a great honor and a gift. Thank you, Crescent Creative, for being a top supporter of the podcast Iron, and also for demonstrating how artists can create an interesting and inspiring living for themselves by producing custom client work. You are a great role model to many of us. Thank you. Thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top supporter of the show. I am so honored and encouraged to have your support, and thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the U.S. and its cast iron artists. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts, for being a top supporter, and also for your year-round work as a national center for iron casting and metal arts, and for offering our community visiting and artist and resident artist opportunities, as well as hosting our national conference. So yes, in closing, thank you to all of our individual supporters as well over on Patreon. The funds that everyone contribute are invaluable to help me to continue to put on the show. But if you don't have it in your budget to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, I understand. Instead, if you could just share this podcast with someone you think would be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps. And for that, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.